Okay, so you want to buy a coffee chain. And why wouldn't you? You take beans worth maybe 30 cents, pour in a little milk, and sell the cup for $5. People line up for it every single morning. They come back before work, after lunch, on the weekend. It is the rarest thing in business, a product your customer is chemically addicted to. You slap your logo on the cup, open a second store, then a fifth, then a 50th, and build a warm, glowing little empire that smells like roasted beans and money. And the numbers look magical. On the coffee itself, shops keep 75 to 80 cents of every dollar. The biggest chain on earth runs almost 40,000 stores and pulls in over $37 billion a year. So how hard can it be to grab your own slice? So what is the trap? That beautiful 80% margin on a cup is a lie by the time it reaches your pocket, because you are not really paying for coffee. You are paying for rent on a corner and for the wall of baristas behind the counter, and those two things quietly eat almost everything. Most coffee shops, after it all, keep just a few pennies on the dollar, and plenty do not survive at all. But here is the part that will change how you see that cup forever. The most profitable thing a giant coffee chain sells is not coffee at all. The biggest one is quietly sitting on nearly $2 billion of other people's money, loaded into its app and gift cards, money it gets to hold and use before it ever pours a single drink. So, no, this is not a cozy little coffee dream. It is one of the most brutal businesses on the planet, wearing an apron. And by the end, you will know how it really makes money, why most shops secretly bleed out, and the hidden trick that turned a coffee company into something that looks a lot more like a bank, because the real business here was never the coffee. So what is a coffee shop, really? Most people think you are buying the coffee business. You are not. Let us look at the actual cup. The beans, the milk, the little paper cup, and the lid, all of it together might cost you 50 cents, maybe less. And you sell that cup for $5. That is a markup most businesses on earth would kill for. On paper, you keep 75, even 80 cents of every single dollar that crosses the counter. So if the coffee is that profitable, where does all the money go? Here is the secret. You are not really in the coffee business. You are renting a moment in a very expensive spot and paying humans to create it. Because when someone buys a $5 latte, they are not paying for roasted beans. They are paying for a warm place to sit, a clean bathroom, fast Wi-Fi, a friendly face who knows their name, and a drink handed to them in 90 seconds flat. The coffee is almost an afterthought. What you are actually selling is a comfortable little pit stop in someone's day. And that changes everything about what you are buying. You are not buying a product with a fat margin. You are buying a location and a team of people to run it. The exact same espresso machine in a busy downtown corner is a gold mine. In a quiet side street, it is a slow, painful death. Same beans, same recipe, completely different business. Now here is the trick the big chains understand that the dreamer with one shop does not. That daily habit, the fact that your customer comes back every single morning without thinking, is the most valuable thing you own. Most businesses fight to get a customer once. A coffee shop gets the same face 300 times a year. That predictable, repeating visit is the real asset hiding behind the counter. But that beautiful 80% margin is about to meet two silent killers. Two costs so heavy they quietly decide whether your dream shop lives or dies. So you have got the magic cup. 50 cents in, $5 out. On paper, you are printing money. So why do so many coffee shops quietly go broke? Two words: rent and labor. These are the two silent killers, and together they eat almost that entire beautiful margin before you see a cent start with rent. Remember, coffee is an impulse. Nobody drives across town for it, so you need to be exactly where the crowd already is, on the busy corner, in the shiny plaza, next to the train station. And everybody wants that spot, so the landlord charges a fortune for it. That prime location, the very thing that makes your shop work, is also the single most expensive bill you will pay every month, whether you sell 1 cup or 1,000. Then comes the second killer: labor. A coffee shop does not run itself. You need baristas, pulling shots, taking orders, cleaning tables, opening at 5 in the morning and closing late at night. And during the rush, you need a whole wall of them, moving fast, because a slow line is a dead coffee shop. All those wages, hour after hour, pile up into your biggest cost of all. Here is how brutal the math gets. Take that $5 latte. Roughly 30 cents is the actual coffee, but close to a third of that $5 vanishes into rent and another third vanishes into paying your staff. Add the smaller bills, the milk that spoils, the machines that break, the cups, the power, the insurance, and that gorgeous 80% margin has quietly collapsed. Many surviving shops walk away with just a few pennies of real profit on every dollar. Some keep nothing at all. That is the trap of this business. The product is cheap, but the stage you have to perform it on is savagely expensive. And it means one quiet, dangerous truth sits under every coffee shop. You are always just a few slow weeks away from the whole thing tipping into the red, which raises the question that decides everything. How many cups, exactly, do you need to sell just to survive? So how many cups do you actually need to sell just to keep the lights on? The answer shocks most first-time owners. Before you earn a single dollar of profit, you have to cover the rent, the wages, the milk, the power, all of it. And once you add those up, a typical small coffee shop needs to pull in somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000 every month just to break even, just to reach zero. That can mean selling well over 100, sometimes 200 cups a day, every single day, before you personally make a cent. Now think about what that means. On a rainy Tuesday when the street is empty, the rent does not pause. The staff still get paid. The machines still hum. Your costs march on, whether customers show up or not. So a couple of slow weeks in a row does not just hurt. It can quietly drown you. And here is the cruel twist hiding inside the coffee shop dream, the thing that sounds lovely, but secretly bleeds you. You built a cozy place where people love to sit. Comfy chairs, free Wi-Fi, a warm corner. So a customer buys one $3 coffee and then sits at your table for 3 hours, using your power, your bathroom, your seat, while 10 other paying customers see no space and walk away. You are not running a coffee shop anymore. You are running a very expensive free office, and it is killing your numbers. That is why so many shops that look busy and beloved still quietly go under. A full room is not the same as a profitable one. A line out the door on the weekend means nothing if the place sits half empty and money losing every weekday afternoon. So the harsh truth is this. Coffee has a beautiful margin, but a coffee shop has a brutal engine. And the only way to win is to feed that engine relentlessly, which comes down to one thing above all others. The exact patch of ground you decide to stand on. So if this business lives or dies on location, how do you actually win the ground war? This is where the person with one dreamy little cafe gets crushed by the giants, and it is worth understanding why. Start with the single most powerful weapon in coffee, the drive-thru. A shop with a drive-thru can serve 2-3 times the customers of a shop with only a counter, because the busiest coffee moment on earth is a rushed person in a car at 8 in the morning who will not and cannot get out and park. They want to grab it and go. Give them a window, and you capture a flood of customers a sit-down cafe never even sees. Then there is the trick that looks insane until you understand it. Clustering. You have probably wondered why the big chain puts 4 stores within a mile of each other, almost competing with itself. It is not a mistake. It is a strategy. Blanket an area, and you own the map. No matter which way you turn, their logo is the closest one. They are not trying to fill every store. They are making sure you never, ever have a reason to drive to a competitor. They are buying the whole neighborhood's habit. And this is where scale becomes a weapon the little guy cannot match. A giant chain buys beans, milk, and cups by the millions of tons, at prices your corner shop could only dream of. They can afford the slick app, the fast machines, the perfect training. So while you agonize over the rent on one location, they are quietly winning on cost, on speed, and on convenience in 1,000 locations at once. So the little independent cafe is not really competing on coffee. It is fighting a war of density and convenience against an opponent with far bigger guns. And to survive, it has to offer something the giant never can, which points us straight at the real secret of why people pick one coffee shop over another. And it is not the taste. So if people do not really choose a coffee shop for the taste, what are they actually buying? Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Most customers cannot even tell you which cup came from which shop in a blind test. So they are not paying $5 for superior coffee. They are paying for something far more powerful. They are paying for a ritual think about what really happens. Every morning, at the same time, A person takes the same route, orders the same drink, hears their name called, and feels, for 90 seconds, a small pocket of comfort and control before the chaos of their day. That is not a beverage. That is a habit stitched into their identity. And habits are the most valuable thing a business can ever own, because the customer stops making a decision. They just show up, automatically, 300 mornings a year. And on top of the ritual, you are selling speed and certainty. When someone is rushing to work, they do not want an adventure. They want the exact same drink, made the exact same way, in under 2 minutes, no surprises. That boring, reliable sameness is the product. It is why a person will drive past 3 independent cafés to reach the familiar green logo. Not because it tastes better, because it is predictable, and predictable feels safe. This is the secret every giant chain understands. They are not really in the business of making great coffee. They are in the business of manufacturing habit. The coffee is just the delivery system, the thing that gets a customer to build a daily loop that runs on autopilot, with your cash register sitting right in the middle of it. And once you understand that you are truly selling habit, not coffee, you unlock the single most brilliant money trick in this entire industry. A move so clever it quietly turned the biggest coffee company in the world into something that is barely even about coffee at all. In fact, it turned it into a bank. So here is the trick that changes everything. The one that turns a coffee company into something far more powerful. It is the little app on your phone and the gift card in your wallet. Watch how it works. Instead of just paying for one coffee, the chain gently nudges you to load money onto the app first. Put in $25, we will throw in a few bonus stars. So you do. And in that single moment, something magical happens for the company. You just handed them $25 real, and they have given you nothing back yet. No coffee, no cost, just a number sitting in their app, waiting. Now multiply that by tens of millions of customers all doing the same thing. At any given moment, the biggest coffee chain on earth is holding close to $2 billion of its customers' money. Money already paid for coffee not yet poured. Think about what that really is. It is a giant interest-free loan from you to them that they never have to pay back in cash. They just pay it back slowly, in lattes, and it gets even better for them, because a chunk of that money will never be spent at all. Gift cards get lost. Apps get forgotten. Balances get abandoned. The industry has a quiet little word for this free money, breakage, and it hands these companies hundreds of millions of dollars in pure profit for coffee they never even have to make. So step back and see what they have really built. Over 30 million people voluntarily depositing money onto an app, letting the company hold it and use it for free, and forgetting some of it forever. And here is the fact that should stop you cold. This one coffee company is sitting on more of its customers' money than most actual banks in America hold in deposits. Let that sink in. A place you thought just sold lattes is quietly holding a bigger pile of the public's cash than thousands of real licensed banks. That is not a coffee shop. That, quietly, is a bank. One of the most successful little banks in the world, disguised as a place that sells you a morning latte. And that is the final clue to the biggest secret of this entire business. That the coffee, the thing with your name on the cup, was never really the point at all. So, knowing all of it, the thin margins, the 2 silent killers, the brutal engine, should you actually open a coffee shop? Let us talk real numbers. First, the price of entry, and it is not small. A proper sit-down coffee shop can cost anywhere from $100,000 to over $350,000 to open, once you count the lease, the build-out, the espresso machines, and the furniture. Want a drive-through? The real moneymaker. That can push it higher still. And if you go the franchise route, buying into a known name, the total investment can run from a couple $100,000 to well over $1 million. This is not a cheap dream to chase. And here is the honest truth about the return. If you open one independent shop, hoping to sip espresso and count your money, you are most likely buying yourself a job. A hard one. You will be the barista, the manager, the cleaner, and the accountant, working brutal early hours for a margin of just a few pennies on the dollar. Plenty of people do it, and love it. But they do it for the lifestyle, not the fortune. So who actually gets rich in coffee? Almost never the person with one shop. It is the person who thinks in systems, who nails one profitable location, then copies it, again and again, building the density, the brand, and eventually that magical app full of other people's money. The wealth was never in a single perfect cafe. It was in building a repeatable machine and then owning the habit of an entire city. So should you buy a coffee chain? If you want a cozy little lifestyle business, open one shop and go in with your eyes wide open. But if you actually want to get rich, understand this. You are not really trying to sell coffee. You are trying to build a habit, a brand, and quietly, a tiny bank. And that is a very different and far more ambitious dream. So here is where we land. You wanted to buy a coffee chain, a cozy little empire that sells warm cups for $5 a piece. What you found underneath was something stranger and far more brilliant. You found that the coffee was never really the business at all, because look at what you were actually buying, not beans. You were buying a location on the busiest corner you could afford. You were buying a team fast enough to feed a morning rush. You were buying a daily ritual, stitched so deep into people's lives that they show up on autopilot 300 mornings a year. And at the very top, you were buying the most beautiful trick of all, an app full of other people's money, handed to you early and interest-free. The cup was just the costume. The real business was the habit, the brand, and the quiet little bank humming underneath it. And that is the thread that has tied every one of these stories together. The mall was never about the stores. It was about the crowd. The ranch was never about the cattle. It was about the land. The ATM was never about the cash. It was about the toll. And the coffee chain was never about the coffee. It was about owning a habit so powerful that people pay you before they even walk in the door. In every single case, the winner was the same kind of person. Not the one staring at the obvious thing everyone else sees, but the one who quietly asks, what is really being sold here? And then buys that instead. So the next time you are standing in line, watching someone tap an app to pay for a $4 latte they will finish in 10 minutes, do not just see a coffee shop. See it for what it really is. A location, a ritual, a brand, and a tiny bank wearing an apron. And then ask yourself the only question that has ever really mattered in business. When everyone is staring at the cup, who is quietly counting the money underneath it?